Welcome to Season 5 of the Long-Winded One podcast. Listen as we showcase original work from top Royal Road authors read by professional voice actors. Hear interviews from your favorite litRPG and game lit authors. Lastly, listen as the Long-Winded One tries his hand at his first ever litRPG novel, The Four Treasures.
All right, well, welcome everybody to another episode of The Long-Winded One. With me tonight, I have a Royal Road friend named Carson Spencer. He goes by the handle MrCarson, and he has written a story that I was captivated with back probably a few months ago called Chosen of the Endless One. So we're going to talk to Carson tonight, learn about him, and then immediately following the episode, we will hear an excerpt from Chosen of the Endless One. So Carson, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jared. I appreciate you taking the time to interview me today. This is really a cool experience for me.
I'm honored to have you here. And let's start off by just learning a little bit about you. Do you mind telling us about yourself?
Yeah, so I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, had 5 brothers, and I was the nerd. All the other ones were into sports and all sorts of things like that. I was the one that we'd go on vacations and I'd bring along a book and they'd be out playing and I'd be like sitting in the car reading a book. So I grew up doing a lot of fun things with my brothers, like blowing things up and stuff, but also spent a lot of time on my video games and books. But that's kind of how my life began, and then I kind of fell in love with writing when I was younger. Didn't ever publish anything just because I can't string 2 sentences together without having 50 grammatical errors. But that's where we got into grammar correctors, and all of a sudden I'm like, hey, maybe I'll publish something.
Carson, can you tell us how you came to the world of progression fantasy and Isekai, and if you read any lit RPG or game lit?
As far as a gateway writer, the first thing that happened to me is I started reading or listening to audiobooks on Hoopla Digital, and came across a book, and I can't remember the author's name, but it was Way of the Shaman, and it's a Russian author. And I truly believe those Russian authors, they know how to write their lit RPGs. But started with that, and then as far as that goes, kind of into Isaac, because they bring them into different worlds there. And then I just started listening to everything on Hoopla Digital that had anything to do with it, and they had all the links there. And then I'm like, well, now I need a Kindle Unlimited subscription, because now their books aren't released on audio, so got to go there. And so just got really hooked on the different lit RPG as far as that goes. I got into the style of book that I write, which is kingdom building, partially off of lit RPG, because there are some lit RPG that are kingdom building. But what really got me interested, and I believe it was, I can't remember the author's name again, but it was Destiny's Crucible series, and just a really good book series about how a person can go to a different world or into the past and change things based on just the simple knowledge that we know today. That's kind of how I got started with all of this, and the books that kind of hooked me.
Yeah. Well, and I'm guessing at some point you discovered Royal Road.
Oh yeah. So Royal Road, that came to me. I believe what I was doing is I was on Kindle Unlimited. I had just read probably the second book in the series All the Skills, which is a really cool deck building type series. And of course, I was waiting for the next book. And I typed it in to look up when the next book was, and it led me to Royal Road. I'm like, what in the world is this? I said, this is so cool. I've got all these books that I can read. That's where I kind of got into Royal Road.
Yeah, and how long were you on Royal Road before you decided you were going to start writing there?
Well, at least a year and a half. There were a couple on there. There was one, and again, I'm terrible with names, so uh, somebody had written on there and then moved it to Kindle, and I'm like, and I was just so fascinated with them. Like, I'm going to try and do this, but I'm going to try and do it from a different perspective. I'm going to go at it from a directive where it's just not somebody that has a lot of knowledge. So I'm like, this is really cool. I want to make it more of a guy that has random knowledge rather than a specific set of skills going back in time. So
He's kind of like your anti Liam Neeson, right? He doesn't have a specific set of skills.
yeah,
Yeah,
he's
he's
got a
got the real.
lot of different stuff going through his head, a lot of different things that he remembers from growing up, and just weird things that just stuck out to him that progress the story, but aren't necessarily he's not a chemist. He's not a doctor. He's not anybody that specializes in one particular thing or has any advanced knowledge, but just things that stuck out to him in his childhood that anybody might come across those things.
Well, tell us, how's your experience been on Royal Road so far?
So as an author, it's been really amazing. And not just the support that I get. I was surprised at the amount of support I got, but also I have to say, thank you to those people who are willing to step out there and criticize the work and say, hey, this is where you need to improve, because that is really what has helped me in my writing, uh, and it was what really I needed. I needed that criticism in order to really make myself a better author.
Yeah, and you're just for the record, we're not talking about those 0.5 star trolls, those cowards who don't leave their
No.
name. Sorry, I have to get that out there. I got to get that off my chest. Those are my words, not Mr. Carson's words. Please continue.
Yeah, no, and that's totally true. It's it's not the criticism of the 0.5 stars or anything like that. What it is it's people that are willing to comment. There's a lot of people that are willing to just give you a 1 star review or a 5.5 star review or whatever, but they're never going to tell you what's actually wrong. If somebody can give me a 2 star review, but then tell me what I need to improve on, that's great. One of the things that mottos that I developed while I was writing is I say criticism is part of the yin and yang of writing. Compliments keep an author writing. Criticism keeps an author progressing. And so
That's good.
that's kind of how it all comes down to. If you're not getting criticism, there's probably something wrong there. Unless you're one of those guys that is just absolutely amazing, and we'd all love to be them. Yeah, you're probably not getting anybody reading your book if you're not getting enough criticism.
I have some people. I want to mention one by name. Cobalt Patrol is somebody who's been reading my book from the beginning, who has just been instrumental in helping me, write better, point out mistakes that, inaccuracies, contradictions, those sorts of things. And those things are vitally important when you're releasing a web serial.
Oh, absolutely. If you can find somebody that's you know can give you some insight, because one of the things that I find is we're sitting in a room when we're writing. We're in a room and we can see everything in the room, and so when we write things and we kind of forget that the reader is looking through a small hole into the world that we've created. And so we miss things. And they say, well, this doesn't make sense. And we're like, oh, it's because they don't see the emotion behind this character or what the character is thinking. And when we do that, it makes this story not make sense. So when you have somebody that is willing to tell you, okay, look, we need to, you need to change this, then it's just, to me, it's such a blessing to have somebody willing to do that.
Yeah. And I'm wondering how you use Patreon and what your experience has been like with that.
Patreon, it was interesting. Patreon, I kind of put out there because I'm like, the question I had was, would people actually pay to read ahead in my book? Because even no matter the fact that I've got 4.5 star review, you're still wondering, okay, I get that people are being nice, and sometimes, I think, you know, people on Royal Roads are the nicest people ever. And sometimes I believe they're overly nice. But really what I thought is, if people are actually willing to pay to read ahead, then maybe I got something going on here. And so that was part of it. The other part is because I have to have a grammar corrector and an advanced one, and so that costs every month or a yearly subscription. I said, hey, if I can get that paid for, and then also it was recommended to me because they're like, hey, you can advertise if you're getting people to pay for your book, then that's paying for your advertising. So I'm like, yeah, well then I can advertise my book, and uh, or more advertisement I can do here than when I transfer it over to Kindle Unlimited or wherever I'm gonna publish it next.
Yeah, and you've had good interactions on Patreon. It's been a good
Oh
experience so far.
yeah, so, yeah. It's been really really good. Good experience. I'm not making enough to quit my day job, but it's fun because I get to interact with uh, those who are there. They're reading ahead, and so one of the hardest things for me is not releasing extra chapters all the time because I would run out of time, and I want to share this with people. But if I do that, then I quickly get behind my writing. But for these, I've got you know 15 chapters ahead on Patreon. And then I can actually interact with people on these chapters that I just wrote. Those who have signed up for the Patreon, they also have access to my Discord, which is fun. It's a nice way to interact. I didn't make it public because I didn't want to be overwhelmed with doing things with social media to the point where uh, I couldn't get my reading done or my writing done. I also have 6 kids and a business I'm trying to start and my regular job. So I was like, you know what? If I get a Discord that really takes off, that might be a little bit of, a distraction for me. So,
I want to know what your advice is to people who want to do what you do.
so it really depends on what platform you're going for, but I'll give the same advice that I gave to my niece, who was kind of excited that I had written a book, and she had some fantasy idea that she wanted to do. And the first thing I told her is read the forums. There are some amazing people out there that have written fantastic books and have had very good success. Uh, and they've actually taken the time to put out um, forums on what what they think is probably the best, and it may not work for everybody. I'm going to just put a plug out for the one that I came across that I wish I had seen before I started writing, and it was by the author of Defiance of the Fall series, and it was called "Running Your Story Like the Business It Is." And anybody that's going to, if you are looking to make money off of your book and you're doing it the serial web way on, Royal Road, definitely read that. There's some other good ones out there, but that one certainly stuck out to me when I read it and said, dang, I wish I would have had that, a year ago. The other thing, like I went back to, you know, don't give up due to criticism. Make your make your writing better. Okay, you can find so much. People are harsh, people are cruel. When you're writing, there are some people, and they're usually the people that don't have fictions on Royal Road.
Yeah, right,
They're not
right.
the authors on Royal Road. They're the self-proclaimed book critics, but they have some good insight. And um, you know, criticism is not a reason to not write. If somebody's taking the time to criticize your work, uh, it means that you have the opportunity then to fix that. And it's, to me, that's a compliment to have somebody take the time to not just go, oh, that was bad, but actually take the time and say, hey, this was bad and this is why. Keep that in mind. as an author, you're going to get better. This isn't your first book. This isn't your only book. I think I read an interview one time done by Orson Scott Card, and he says, when you write that first book, you're going to think it is the book. It is going to be the best book that you can't do any better than that. This is your idea, and you're going to publish it, and you're going to write it, and you're going to do that, and it's not going to be your best work. Because guess what? You're going to keep improving, and you're going to keep having ideas. If you're constantly writing, you're going to have a better idea. So, just don't let that criticism get in the way of you becoming a better writer.
Tell me, are you on? It doesn't sound like you're on social media all that much, but can we find you online? And if not social media, like, what about Royal Road? Where can people find you?
Royal Road, you look up MrCarson, all one word, or just Chosen of the Endless One. I am always writing back to people. If you put in, except for those that write thanks for the chapter, they don't need one every single time. But if you write a comment, I'm gonna read it. You write me an email, I'm gonna read it, and I do my best to respond to everybody. Further communication from that, I don't really have any, but I'm always open to talking and conversing through the mail system on Royal Road.
All right. Well, we're going to be hearing a little bit of Chosen of the Endless One. A voice actor, a very talented voice actor named Ben Kramer is doing about 10 minutes of Chosen of the Endless One. And I'm hoping you can help frame this story.
So we're going to hear probably the first part of chapter 1. And this is just as Amos first comes to the world that he is going to be in, and his experience with waking up in a different body, and how he reacts to his new experience.
Yeah, and this is the very beginning, right? I mean, where he's you're figuring out like, oh my gosh, whose body am I in?
Yeah, to me, it's been an amazing journey writing the book, and I think it's an amazing journey for the character as he goes through that and experiences all that.
MrCarson, thanks for being on the podcast. We enjoyed having you, and we hope everybody enjoys your book, Chosen of the Endless One.
Thanks, Jared. Appreciate your time and the opportunity I've had to talk with you.
Thank you for joining us down this litRPG deep dive. Please consider giving us a review on Apple Podcasts and visit us over at longwinded.one, where you can see past episodes and find all of our socials, even our new Discord server. We hope you enjoy.